Peter, thanks very much for your time today. Do you share the confidence of Nancy Pelosi?
Yes, I do believe that the Democrats are going to have enough seats to be the majority party, and that will change things in many, many ways, especially for Mr. Trump's agenda. And it'll be a relief to many Democrats who are united, the corporate Democrats as well as the progressive Democrats came together for this. And it's going to make a big difference in what the direction of the country from now on for the next 2 years, because the Democrats can then block any legislation coming from Trump that could be bad for the country in their point of view. I think Nancy's Pelosi's is not overly optimistic. We are going to get the majority. I'm pretty sure they are.
Right, so you're pretty sure about that. Do we look, though, at the overall result so far in the House and in the Senate as well, where it looks as though the Republicans will probably extend their lead? This is short of the blue wave some people were hoping for and predicting?
Yes, it was. And I think the turning point was the Kavanaugh hearings, where some of Trump supporters got really fired up on that. And they turned out to vote. And the blue wave was a partial wave. It wasn't a full wave. Although it was good enough to do what the Democrats wanted to do, is to basically block Trump from going in the wrong direction. And also, don't forget the impeachment process could begin if the House wants to just send a message. They could actually vote for articles of impeachment and get a majority vote this time, and also use the House investigative committees to really subpoena Trump's records, to get his taxes, perhaps, to find out more about the possible Russia collusion or investigation. From the House side, they'll have all the chairmanships. All the chairpersonships would go to Democrats in the House, which would be quite a change from when all the chair people in the Congress in both houses were from the Republican Party. So Trump's got a lot of things to worry about now to some extent.
Talk us through that process then. So, for example, to try to force Donald Trump to release his tax records, which he refused to do during that election campaign, will that be as simple as the House voting for that? What happens from there?
If they subpoena his records and he does not produce them, this can become a legal issue, and it might actually go to the courts and ultimately the Supreme Court, I suppose, because there is a question: can a sitting president be subpoenaed, or can his records be subpoenaed? It's very possible that that hasn't been settled quite yet, and it's going to end up in the courts. And we can't automatically think that the courts will rule in his favor just because the Supreme Court has 5 conservative justices, 2 of which he appointed. Doesn't mean they're going to go a lockstep along with him on that, because it's talking about separation of powers here and making sure the branches are more co-equal rather than one dominant branch getting their way all the time. The courts are willing to look at the co-equality of the branches. It should be very interesting how this thing plays out in the long run.
Yeah, I guess when you're talking about releasing tax returns, you're talking about not something that's left or right in a political sense on principle, but more who's actually being forced to do that. So you're right, that would be an interesting one to watch. And when you say you really think that the blue wave became more of perhaps a gentle lapping at the ankles, if I might, that's because they really did see Donald Trump pull out all stops to get Justice Kavanaugh appointed, not bow to any pressure during, obviously, what was a very volatile and contested period.
Yes, I do believe that had a certain amount of effect in galvanizing some of these extremely right-wing Trump supporters, especially some of these men who voted for the Republican Party based on their feeling of loss, feeling of being set back, which I think was misguided, because men have not been set back in America. It's just that women are becoming more equal in terms of their achievement of power and influence, and they need to. You know, women were still making only 75 cents for every dollar that men earn for the same type of job. In a lot of ways, women are inequitably treated. Look at the Congress. Only 20% of Congress is women. Now, today, we may have a few more women added to the members of Congress, which will be the right step in the right direction. And men should not fear that. In my view, they should welcome women as partners. And I think that some of these right-wing Republican men were very afraid of their position being eroded. They falsely saw that immigrants were coming in and taking their jobs. That wasn't true. But Trump has been vilifying immigrants. And for God's sake, how could you say that immigrants from south of the border, many of them work in regular hardworking jobs like picking lettuce or working in kitchens and doing the gardening and things? How can you say they're taking the jobs of Americans when it's the high-tech jobs that Americans would take over, and high-paying jobs? It's not a threat to them. In fact, immigrants have helped this country, but Trump was able to use the immigration issue and falsely, with a narrative that was false and wrong and against the American tradition, vilify immigrants by calling them names. And this, unfortunately, some of the racism is still lingering among some of the voters, and they went for it.
Peter Mathews, always good to get your take. We'll see how it plays out and perhaps touch base in a few more days when it is a bit clearer. But as you say, looks like pretty likely we'll see the Democrats back in control of the House, of course, in keeping with what happened with, well, Barack Obama last time as well. So certainly not unprecedented. Let's move on, though.
That's right.